everybody, and welcome to our final episode for this season of Ups and Downs for Doctor Who Flux. I am Sean Ferrick for WhoCulture, and by now you should know how this is going to work. We're going to go through everything we liked and give it an up, and everything that we didn't like, and we're going to give it a down. Now, there is rather a lot to get through this week, so we're going to go quickly, but before we do anything, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Remember, every time that you hit that simplest of buttons, you help this channel grow. Okay, thank you very much, and let's get straight into it. Okay, starting this week straight away with an up. This being the final episode, episode 6, The Vanquishers, everybody starts coming together this week. So all of these loose plot threads that have been just hanging throughout the season all start coming together in this episode, and for the most part, they come together in the TARDIS. So it's great to see everyone, Jericho, Claire, we've got Yaz, we've got Dan, we've got Diane, Vinder, Belle, the Doctor, and Carvanista all together at some point. Now, it's not perfect, we're going to go through some of those downs, but just to see them all together after the whole season, it was great. And particularly, I got a little bit of a feeling in the hearts when Dan, Diane, Belle, and Vinder all reunited on the TARDIS. Now, I didn't want to start with a down, which is why I went with that first. Now we're going with a down. That opening, I downed the cliffhanger last week because we knew the Doctor was going to be fine. She just steps outside of Swarm's reach. Like, she doesn't even run away. It was just really just, okay, what was the point of last week's cliffhanger? Now, I said it at the time, and I agree with it again. It was like they didn't know how to end the episode last week, and so they just went, he'll reach out for her, she might burn, and then so this week it was a bit like, even the Doctor kind of goes like, just go over here then, will I? So yeah, it was a bit like, it wasn't a necessary addition, so, but it is a down from me. The point of this episode really was to kind of wrap up the Sontaran plot, wrap up the Flux plot, wrap up the Ravagers plot, wrap up what Kate Stewart is doing, get Yaz and Dan back together. And you know what? It's not all resolved by the end of the episode, and that is actually an up from me. There are so many threads still up in the air by the end of this episode that I really liked that they didn't just go for the one-size-fits-all fit and fix on everything. So we do get, we advance things like, what's happening with the Sontarans. Some characters probably won't be back for the next episode, but overall there's still so many things going on that although this might be the end of the season, this is most certainly not the end of the story. Another up for me this week is that this episode redeems Joseph Williamson. Now, the man was an eccentric gentleman in real life. He did commission all of those tunnels to be built for no apparent reason. And it is then revealed here that he had those tunnels built because he was able to identify all these cracks in space and time, and he wanted to effectively categorize them and put them into different doorways. And yeah, you know what? It works. So other than just this random crazy historical person, he's served a really important part in the Doctor's journey. And they do take a second to basically stop the episode and go, Mr. Williamson, you can't die here. You're too important to history. And I love when Doctor Who does this, because sometimes it's big and obvious like it is here, other times it's really small and it's not necessarily front and center. And it's something that the show does very, very well. And I think they did absolutely smash it this week. Now, I have a controversial thing here. I have an up, which is the appearance of Kate Stewart. She gets an up. She's in the episode, she gets an up. It's as simple as. She's brilliant. Gemma Redgrave, obviously, is brilliant. She plays the role with, a kind of a muted passion. She's very much a boss when she's on screen, which is not nearly as much as I would like. And considering how much it was sort of like, well, hey, Kate Stewart's back, it was a bit like, oh, okay. So Kate Stewart was in the episode, I guess. Now, what she had to work with was good. It was solid. I really liked seeing her. However, a down is going to go to, what was this human resistance that she was supposed to be heading up against the Sontarans and the Grand Serpent. There is a reference to one poor bugger who's brought before the Grand Serpent and is, psychically killed so that he can give away the location of Kate Stewart. It's entirely pointless, and I'm afraid I felt nothing for the poor fella. We knew he was dead from the moment he was on screen, so, what was the point of any of that? Which actually leads me to another fairly large down of the episode. And that's the Grand Serpent. What was the point of him? Really now. What was the point of that character? In all of Flux, I'm telling myself that the Grand Serpent is going to play a big part in at least the New Year's special. So we'll see, because at the end of this episode, he is exiled onto a rock. Apparently he doesn't need to breathe. That's okay, happens in Doctor Who all the time. Not really bothered about that. But he played so little impact on so much of the story of Doctor Who Flux that one wonders why on earth he was written in at all, only for potentially Vinder to get that scene where he is the one who sort of forces the Grand Serpent to go through the door. I just felt it was a completely superfluous character. It's not that the acting was bad, the performance was good, there just wasn't any reason for it. So, the Grand Serpent, this episode, but for the whole season really, down because it was sort of time wasting, if I'm honest. So, terribly sorry, nothing personal, but Grand Serpent, down from me, I'm afraid. The Sontarans' great plan to stop the Flux is to basically counter this antimatter wave with a wall of matter. So they invite all of the Daleks and all of the Cybermen, and I do mean all of them, to meet them at the location of the Flux. They've kidnapped, or they think they've kidnapped, Jericho and Claire, who are psychically attuned. They use their psychic powers at the Dark Matter Telescope in Chile. They find the location. It's all very exciting. Up to how beautiful this episode is. Now, particularly noticeable when the Flux hits the wall of Dalek ships, Cyber ships, the Lupari shield is there, and the Sontaran ships. This is CGI done right for Doctor Who. It looks incredible. So that is an absolute massive up from me. And I do love the grandiose plan that the Sontarans have. This actually feeds back into my earlier up of how this is not resolved, because by the end of this episode, seemingly, all of the Daleks are gone, all of the Cybermen are gone, potentially all of the Sontarans are gone. So, there's no reset button at the end of this episode. So, they're all vamoosed. We get a little bit of Cybermen, I really do like that. I really do like that, because that's a big swing for Doctor Who. I can only imagine we're going to get some reset button come New Year's, or potentially as we go into next year on the specials, culminating, of course, in the Centenary special in autumn. But as it stands at the moment, the universe is a pretty empty place, and that was fair play, Doctor Who. Fair play. Wasn't expecting that as an ending. I do have a down. Time is a villain, and what was the point of the Ravagers? So again, I find myself asking the same question as I asked of the Grand Serpent. What was the point? So Swarm and Azure had such promise in the beginning of the season, and they just sort of were there for the rest of the season. To be the necessary plot point to explain to us what a passenger is. Great, that's how we absorb the Flux. All right, grand, stunning, that's wonderful. We'll get a little bit of backstory about Atropos. Okay, cool. Oh, are we going to see some more Ruth? No, okay, so we're going to go to Atropos, and then we have the Doctor split into three, which was a cool gimmick. Liked it. Jodie Whittaker working against Jodie Whittaker, brilliant. But we get there, and they're just sort of killed, and that's it. And, Time appears first of all as Swarm, and then as the Doctor herself, and basically proceeds to go, hey, Doctor, I'm a baddie and I'm gonna get you. Not right here for no reason whatsoever, but your time is coming. Big honkin' miss from me, I'm afraid. It was just too left field, and there was no reason given that I could see that Time would spare the Doctor only to come after the Doctor later on. Now, we do get a great line, so excuse me while I give it a quick up, which is, beware the forces that mass against you and their master. Could be a red herring. He will knock 4 times, was a fairly big red herring. So, but great line. A great line in a pretty poor storyline. And I'm afraid that is the flavour that's left in my mouth leaving this episode. It's that I said last week they would have an awful lot to do to really bring this home. And I'm afraid they didn't do it. That is my opinion. And I hate saying it. I hate saying anything kind of negative about it, but I'm afraid it didn't do it. However, I do have a very large up, okay, for this episode. And this season as a whole, but particularly this episode. So by the end, the Doctor manages to get the fob watch, which has the, all of her history, all of her past selves. And she says to Yaz, she looks Yaz in the eye and says, I really want to tell you my story. And Yaz says, okay. But they're also dealing with, poor Dan is mourning the fact that Diane is reeling from her experience in Passenger. She ran on adrenaline for as long as she could, but when things began to calm down, the reality of she was kidnapped by aliens and sucked into a massive passenger, and then all she can do is fixate on the things she can control. Dan, you were late. Now, he wasn't late, and he says that, but their storyline, Yaz dealing with the fact that she spent years working for the Doctor while the Doctor is, through no fault of her own, skipped taking the shortcut. And then the Doctor herself, all of this shows we're dealing with trauma. And yeah, if you're going to travel in time and space, I can absolutely, you are going to deal with trauma. And I really like that Doctor Who put that front and center. And that ties again back into, I like how it's not all resolved in the end. It's not wrapped up in a neat bow. And the Doctor drops the fob watch into the heart of the TARDIS. It's not destroyed, but it's hidden somewhere she can't get it unless she really asks for it. Now obviously, we're going to see this fob watch again. I do like how it ended. I wasn't crazy about the journey to get here, but this destination was not a bad ending for the episode. I do have to say, all the Lupari genocide, we're just not going to mention that, are we? Oh, okay. Well, I mean, we mention it, but like, Carvanista, you cool, bro? Cool. We had like 4 seasons of the Doctor dealing with being the last of their kind. So overall, my overall impression of this episode was they swang big this season. They swang big this episode. And although they clearly are leaving so many things up in the air for future specials to adapt, as a season finale, it did seem a bit messy, a bit both rushed and quite slow in places. But I would be absolutely remiss if my final up of Flux did not go to Eustachius Jericho. Kevin McNally, for me, was the standout of the season. He was brilliant. And I was sorry to see him go. Hopefully there's going to be, presumably there's going to be some sort of undo button. I mean, you can't keep the Daleks and the Cybermen down no matter how much you think you can. So maybe that would give us back Jericho. But he was an absolute up for me this season. This was a good season overall. Ending didn't quite get there, but Flux was a strong contender for some of the best tight Who for quite a while. Now, just giving you a second, we're going to just discuss really quickly, because there's not much to go on, just the trailer for the New Year's special. This is your chance to dip off right now. If you don't want to look at it at all, no problem at all, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. The New Year's special shows us Aisling Bea, shout for Irish actors, and Ajani Salmon, who are going to be our kind of main focus for this episode. Ajani Salmon plays Nick, who has to visit his rental every single year on New Year's Day. Aisling Bea being the owner of this rental, Elf Rental. I like it, very festive. Also starring Pauline McGlynn. Sure, you'll have to watch it. Go on. Some will get that reference, some will not. That's absolutely fine. Folks, thank you so much for joining us for this season of Ups and Downs. We will absolutely be back to give you all the ups and downs from the New Year's special. Our video will come to you January 2nd. In the meantime, keep things wibbly wobbly. You look after yourselves. Thanks so much for stopping by.